So we want to call this the just creator interviews?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm deflowering you.
You are deflowering me, Tony.
Sweet.
What are we calling it?
It's going really well. The format's been really ironed out.
I pronounced your last name right? Right? Marion. Okay. All right, everybody, so we're here for the first episode of our creator interviews. And our first guest is Tony Marion from Lancaster, PA. So, Tony, why don't you start out and give us kind of an introduction to who you are and what you do currently, and then we'll kind of go into your background and everything.
I am a freelance marketing copywriter, screenwriter, and script-to-screen filmmaker. So I write, produce, direct, shoot, edit, VFX, audio, whatever's needed for the project.
And you kind of like specialize in visual effects stuff, right? Because you did that for a while.
Visual effects is kind of a hobby that's gone a little crazy. I used to work at a place that had a video program before I arrived. Their video editor used After Effects for editing, which is totally counterintuitive, but he was coming from Photoshop because he was a graphic designer, so that was the most natural thing for him. When he left and I took over the video department before I could get new software, I started tearing his projects apart to figure out how they worked, and when I saw everything that you could do with After Effects, I was hooked, and I just started right out of the gate any scripts, any stories I could think of to write for videos for that company. If they had a special effect, I didn't shy away because I figured, well, I'll just try to learn how to do it with this software.
Right, yeah.
And that's kind of how I got started. The first thing I did was run someone over with a car.
Okay.
And the boss at the time said, I don't think we can do it realistically. And I said, okay. And when he left my office, I grabbed two coworkers and we went outside and did it. And I put it together for him roughly and showed it to him. He's like, how long? And I said an hour and a half. And he said, yeah, do it, but make it really good. So that was the first time I really did something nutty.
Right. Yeah, like the visual effects stuff for me is always, it's a completely different world. And like I told you earlier, I was trying to, use After Effects, and just that interface doesn't make sense to me. I mean, it took me a while to learn Premiere too, but now Premiere makes sense to me, but After Effects, because I know people that actually edit videos in After Effects, and I don't understand why anyone would do that. But
I mean, I have, but only if they're super intensive with effects too, and it makes more sense to stay in there the whole time. Otherwise, no.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So let's talk a little bit about like how you started. So what was like the first thing in video that you ever did?
A friend of mine and I, when we were in elementary school, he had a large collection of Star Wars action figures, as did I. So we decided to remake the movie in stop motion with the action figures and a Super 8 film camera. And we shot in order because we thought that's how things went. We shot the Tatooine scenes in a sandbox that was really tiny.
Right.
And so you could see grass and a border out around it. It was really awful. We didn't get very far. We didn't edit it because we had no way of editing back then. I mean, that once his parents got the film developed, it became, so how do we cut this?
Right.
And how do we draw lasers on here now and everything? We just kind of gave up. But that was the first thing. I actually was a writer long before I got into film.
Like screenplays or?
Well, I did short stories.
Okay.
Wrote, actually ghost wrote a novel for somebody and wrote one of my own. And the film stuff.
How does ghostwriting a novel work?
It's basically dictated and then you clean up.
Oh, okay.
Their fumfering and stuff, and you make their story a little more interesting by bending it in certain places.
Okay.
And it was a war novel, and then once the guy got out, how he tried to adjust back, and he was in the medical profession at the time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what was your first thing you actually filmed and edited and released? Because I know you did a lot of work in BMX for a while.
I did 4 full-length BMX videos.
And what is full length for the people at home that don't know?
Back in the day, back then, and by back in the day I mean 90s. full length was like 50 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
So if you start going over an hour, most people would be like, okay, that's enough. But I did 2 or 3 of those that were okay. And then I did one that was pretty well received and got some really good reviews in magazines. Got me on a first name basis with a lot of pros. And it definitely started towards a career path that life got in the way of.
Right.
And I had to get away from it. I had to let it go, which bummed me out. I still keep up on the sport, still follow it daily. Pick up the bike now and then and go for a round, but nothing serious.
Nothing major, yeah, that's fair. I mean, because we all started somewhere doing something that we really, really liked because we really liked it. Like for me, I started doing audio first, and the reason I got into doing audio is because my band in high school wanted to make an album. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll learn how to do that so that obviously we don't have to pay. I mean, I was 15 years old. I couldn't pay for studio time.
Right on.
So, it's kind of cool to see when a passion like that becomes almost a career. Because that's kind of, how I got started getting into video was because every video needs audio, which is kind of cool to see. So then let's talk a little bit about your time at Dewclaw Brewing, because that was where you did most of your career in video, right? You were there the longest, at least.
Yeah, it started off, I was hired as sort of, they called it marketing coordinator, which is Gopher, basically, and a bunch of other stuff. And they needed a copywriter, and I took my last full-length BMX video to the interview with me, because I knew they had a video program, but what they were doing was they would take established funny movies, rip scenes from the DVDs, recombine it with funny titles about the beer, and there's your beer release video. And they had 4 restaurants at the time, and they would do a 2-day party for every seasonal once a month. It was always a Wednesday and a Thursday. They would show a funny video, and then the beer would officially be on tap. Well, I think the owner back then kind of knew with how things were growing, he couldn't get away with that forever. He saw YouTube starting to blow up. He knew he'd want to spread the word. Can't put those kind of videos out because someone sees you using their stuff for advertising rather than, something like an honest trailer or something cool and parody funny. They'll come get you. So he wanted to start doing original content videos, and I took my last full-length BMX video with me. And so he brought me in, and I guess for my first 2 years there, every beer release would be the same. It'd be myself, the owner, and the one graphic designer getting a little tipsy at the beer releases and joking about what video we were going to make for the next beer, and we never made one. And so I guess it was one December, we were at a beer release, and I said, hey, Serum's up next. That was the name. It was a double IPA, big double IPA, called Serum. There's this old joke about getting bitten by a rattlesnake. So I tell him the joke and say, what if we did the video this way? And he's like, that's awesome. But it's just our typical tipsy talking about it.
Forth, cool idea thing.
So I come into my office on Friday, and the owner comes in, and he goes, so we're doing that video for Serum, right? And I'm like, what? I'm like, this is Tony Dave drunky time at the beer release. This isn't happening.
Right.
And that was our first video. I probably hadn't actually made a video end-to-end in almost 10 years at that point. And it only took one, because videos like anything else, you have to love the process or you're not going to stick with it. And I let it go for a long time, but the first little taste back in, we made that first video, and I was ripped right back in. And I was happy, so happy to be back to it.
And how long, you were there for how long? Like 10 years, right? It was a while.
13 years.
Wow. Yeah, that was like when the craft beer industry wasn't nearly as big as it is now. I mean, there's that industry's like super inundated, super saturated now.
It is very saturated to the point where I don't know if this was the first time in a long time or if it's the second year, but the market shares actually contracted a little bit. They were on a really long roll of just building. But from what I heard, seltzers and stuff are cutting it. I don't keep up anymore. I was a little bit there. I was helping produce a beer show, but we weren't really getting the kind of traction we needed, and I had to move on to some other stuff.
Right.
So
in those 13 years, what was your like favorite video or favorite series that you guys ever put together?
I know what you're angling for, and ironically, it's not my favorite. But we can talk about that because it's got its own really bizarre fan base. The owner of Dewclaw is a comics aficionado. Like, he's way into it. He knows a lot, and to the point where his opinions are almost never wrong. Like, if you try to challenge him on something, he will tell you why you're wrong. And when you sit and think about it, you're like, damn it, he's right again. So we had a beer called Blackjack. It's a big imperial stout. And what the idea I pitched was that Batman Begins had just come out. And there's that scene at the end where Gordon gives Batman the card in the evidence bag and he flips it over and it's a Joker. So I pitched this whole video where he comes, instead of that card, he gives him a blackjack. He comes to Dewclaw looking for clues as to what this means, and instead he drinks himself into oblivion and becomes this obnoxious asshole. And the owner was a little bit against it because he goes, no, we really need to do this right. So I approached one of our brewers who is a pretty good actor, and the owner wasn't against it, but he was like really nervous.
Right.
So I told this brewer, you have to kill this. Not only did he kill that video, we got a whole series out of it. We had some other characters tangential in other series, and we brought it together in a super video called Beer Vengers. It is our team up video. We made 2 of those. We actually wrote a 3rd one that never got made. And for some reason, there's a very tiny group of people who are obsessed with those videos, or were obsessed with those videos, and just
The Beer Vengers videos.
Yeah.
So who all was in the Beer Vengers?
Drunk Batman, Wonder Woman, who her personality was constantly put upon. The recurring joke with her is everybody always needed a ride. Like, the Batmobile was never there. So Batman was always bumming a ride in the Invisible Jet. And at one point, someone borrowed the Invisible Jet, parked it, and couldn't find it because it's invisible. And so she was driving a Chrysler HHR, a bright orange, ugly one. That was one of the jokes.
Oh, goodness.
And we also had a rabbit that was kind of lifted from a video someone else made, a very violent rabbit. We also had a beer called Man Bishop. So Man Bishop was also violent and a character. And then one of our brewers became our Nick Fury, who kind of tried to run everything, but he was on DUI number 8. So he could never leave and go anywhere on missions because he had a house arrest.
Right.
Ankle bracelet on. And we recycled the same jokes over and over again. And more or less, it was an excuse to have Batman saying really off-color things, but still being, like, cute to everybody.
Right.
So people like that, they were grueling. Because instead of doing like your typical 2.5-minute release video, which is kind of what we established for the format, these things would be 2 parts and a total of like 10 to 12 minutes long. Talk about all the costuming, all the props, all the lighting that would go into that. So instead of a typical 1 to 3 day shoot, we're looking at 7 to 10 days.
Right.
We're making a little movie. And so when I say they're not necessarily my favorite, it's because I start to get tense and thinking about what
because
it took
you know
to
what
make
it took.
them.
Yeah.
They were fun. Everybody had a good time making them. It's just that there was a lot that went on and very stressful.
Right.
From my time there, there's 3 that stick out though. The one Colossus video was actually the second Colossus video we ever made. It was just a marketing. It came together so well and did exactly what we needed it to do and what we wanted it to do. It just hit on all cylinders. So that one, I'll always remember fondly. I'm pretty sure the owner of Dewclaw still talks about that video. We did for the Beer Devil's Milk, we did a Van Helsing parody where we made all kinds of off-color jokes and the lead actress in it was brilliant and also the giggliest person I've ever worked with. So that was just such a fun day.
Right,
like,
yeah.
You've been on a lot of sets now. You know, if the mood on set is good, it's going to be a good day at work. So there's that one. And then we made a video. It was the first one I didn't write. There was no script. It was for a beer called Retribution. And that beer was aged for 6 months in bourbon barrels. And at the time, no one was aging that long. So it was about patience and dedication. And so what I did was put out a casting call. And when I met people with interesting faces, that kind of gave me an idea for a story where there wouldn't be words, I cast them. And so I had 4 different stories going on in this 1 minute, 20-second video. And it was really, really well received. And that was the first time where I ever prioritized thinking strictly visually from the get-go rather than worry about what the words were going to be and doing it that way. So those are the 3 favorites. And I can't thank the owner of Dewclaw enough, because he basically let me have 5-6 years more film school and get paid for it, because I learned so much during that time. And anytime I'd go to him and say, here's what I want to do, I've never done it before, he'd be like, go.
Have fun.
Yeah, like the motto at that place was always, you aren't failing unless you're not trying. So, yeah.
So can we like watch any of these online? Because I would personally like to see some of these, because I've never seen any of them.
He just emailed me the other day asking for the YouTube password, and I haven't been there in like 3 years, so 3-4 years, so I don't know. I don't know what's still up on the channel or not.
Okay.
But they have their own YouTube channel. So.
Okay.
And I know a couple videos we had to remove because in the beginning we weren't always really good about copyrighted stuff. So the joke was the Beer Vengers videos, each one would set a new record for copyright violations for a Dewclaw. I think the second Beer Vengers actually had 27 different instances of copyright violation that if anyone wanted to complain, they would have a right to. But it seems like when you do funny stuff, people mostly let it go. So...
Okay, so we're going to segue into something that I personally have a vested interest in. You talked a little bit about how your time at Dewclaw, you were making basically movies every month or whatever.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the movie that you and I worked on. It was your movie. You wrote it. You directed it. So let's talk about that one.
What do you want to talk about? I've been kind of wanting to make a feature film for a really long time. And I would always say, something came up or something didn't come together. And I've always had at least one person in my life, no matter what decade, no matter where I'd moved on to, who would just be brutally frank with me about everything. And they would all say, no, you haven't made a movie yet because you just haven't made the movie yet. And so I decided on this one, I was just going to write till the story was told. Didn't really care if it actually hit full feature length, but according to IMDb it is, so we're just going to go with that. It's a little over an hour and change. And so I wrote, I'm a big fan of heist movies. It's not the normal thing I usually write, but I wrote a couple in the last couple of years and just decided to make one. Small town heist movie with a revenge aspect to it.
Right, and then the name of the film is Loose Ends.
Loose Ends.
And this is hopefully not the only one in the series, right?
It's actually, as written, it is the middle episode of a trilogy.
Okay.
The others are outlined. Actually, that might be a little bit of a fib. One actually has some scenes written. The third one actually has a scene written. So... because I wrote a scene specifically for actresses auditioning for the lead character, the lead female character. She's got a lot of heavy lifting to do and a lot of changing her character and emotions, like on a dime sometimes. So I wrote a scene that would do all that in 3 minutes rather than picking like 6 different scenes out of the movie and making them do them all. And it turned out to be a fun scene. So with a little modification, it's actually the opening of what the third chapter would be if we go there. There are other balls in the air, though, right now that might be the next project after this. Two I can't talk about, and I'm not trying to cool guy anybody. I just can't talk about them yet. And then there's one that is a reverse heist movie. The money's already gone, and now people are looking for it. And where Loose Ends is kind of more a popcorny Ocean's 11 kind of feel, this is heavier, and it delves into the human capacity to compartmentalize, sometimes in really dark ways. So I'd like to do that one, but the other two projects are pretty appealing because they both share unconventional ideas and unconventional storytelling methods. That's all I can say right now. There's actually going to be a meeting tomorrow about that very topic, about what's potentially next.
Right.
So
Loose Ends, from start to finish, like obviously I know from my personal experience with the film that it's not a typical start to finish. You know, the script gets written and then the movie is filmed and then it's done. Loose Ends took how many years from when it was written?
Loose Ends was written in early 2016, the first draft. And I'm a big believer in, once you think the story and the characters are where they need to be, it doesn't matter if you haven't had it proofread yet. Don't buy into that. The more important thing is getting it to people you trust and seeing if characters and story and that kind of stuff are working. So I had a bunch of people read it. It didn't take raising a budget very seriously. Like, I toyed around with some different ideas, but didn't really pursue it. And then the freelance stuff was just drying up. And I saved up a bunch of money to live on in case that happened, because I knew it would take a while to kind of build my own thing. And so I was coasting for a little bit, getting little odds and ends here and there, but not like a steady pay. And so I was talking to someone about the Loose Ends script. It just came up, and this person had a budget idea, and I tried it and it worked. So I kind of had almost 2/3 of the budget immediately after just taking a couple meetings. So could parlay that as kind of leverage to say, look, a group of people believed this much. It's not going to cost you that much to get in. And so I had another good group of people who then put some other money up. And as you know, we took the unusual angle for an indie of having product placement. And it's some of the goofiest product placement you will ever see. But I found a way to write it into the script in a believable way that it also becomes my Ocean's 11 air freshener in the truck, let's say. It becomes a hint as to how the plot is actually developing versus what you're seeing on screen.
Okay.
So
what, for people that want to start making movies, because movies is kind of like, whether it's a Netflix or Hulu or even a actual movie theater movie, that's kind of like the pinnacle of the video world, right?
Yeah.
The big screen is the pinnacle of the movie world, but there's a lot that goes into those that people don't necessarily realize. Like, there's a whole lot more that people don't necessarily realize. So like for Loose Ends, what do you think was probably, other than securing the budget, what was probably like the most difficult part of that?
It's the same thing for every video project, only times 100. And we've known each other long enough that you know I'm kind of a maniac about prep. Like, I try to prep for every possible contingency I can. I spend hours thinking about it. I spend hours making lists and repacking and looking at everything. It's still not going to be enough, ever. And I thought we were going to be in better shape than we were. And, you know, there's little emergencies and little fires to put out all the time on a project like that. But it's the sheer amount of prep and scheduling and working with a larger crew than I'm used to, and all the personalities.
Because we had what, probably 10 people total, pretty much on set every day.
About 10 people on set every day, and for me, that would have been my biggest thing ever. And now the way things are headed, I'm going to be looking back on this even by the end of the year and being like, 10 people, whatever. So, because I've been working with a company called Broken Tile Productions in Lancaster, and they've got 2 films coming out, both of which I helped on. One a little bit, one a lot more. One called On Turning 16, which is a short, and one called the movie Dirt, which is actually being considered for some festivals right now.
Okay.
It turned out really well. And I know On Turning 16 was entered in a couple things, but I haven't heard anything back how they fared with that yet. But yeah, the crew for what was actually a smaller, more contained movie for the movie Dirt was almost probably twice what we had on Loose Ends. And it's like, wow, these guys really tried to think of everything and really tried to keep it tight and professional, where I'm so used to being a one-man band that usually when I have a second set of hands, I'm like,
right.
Yay!
And that's the way it is for most, freelancers. Pretty much every freelancer out there is doing everything themselves. It's you write everything, you film everything, you light everything, you do all your own audio. So when you have people that are dedicated to those certain tasks, those specific tasks, it's a whole hell of a lot easier for you to focus in on the direction side of it.
And I thought that was going to be the case on Loose Ends. I need to break myself of still trying to put out every fire. And that's been the biggest adjustment. And that's why I take a lot of other people's projects, even if I'm just doing audio. Like I did audio on a little bit of lighting and a little bit of second unit stuff on a feature called Viscera that just was released recently. And I was so happy to not have to worry about putting out every fire that came up. It's just a different experience, and it's cool to see other directors work too, because you can learn some stuff. I learned a lot from that production, but mainly it's just a feeling of, at the end of the day, it's that guy's movie. So,
right.
I'm here
the pressure is off of your
I'm here to
shoulders.
do my job, but if hair and makeup doesn't show up, not really my problem.
Right.
That's his phone call to make. So that's the biggest difference is trying to break that mindset when I'm directing and producing, that everything that happens, I have to be involved in it, and I need to learn to let that go.
And as a director, it's challenging when you're picking your crew too, because if you have, one bad seed, it can ruin an entire production, you have to make sure that you have people that are going to be able to work well with others, essentially.
I had that recently on a project, and it was just more of a bringing the whole mood down, and rather than vote the problem off the island, we just kind of isolated it and ignored it as much as we could, and it just kind of gritted it out.
Right.
Yeah. This, believe it or not, like most indie film scenes are so small that you can't really say, well, that person was a complete pain in the ass to work with.
Right.
Because even if that's true, you end up looking like the bad guy.
Because there are probably other people in very close to your circle that have had really good experiences with that person.
And it's going to spread.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to spread that quick. So, more or less, you're just like... and
you kind of just brush it off.
Yeah, but most of the experiences have been great.
Yeah, like our crew for Loose Ends was great. I think we all worked super, super well together.
It was a good crew, and it was a fun crew. It was funny to have some of my family as extras in the diner scene, because they'd never been on any set before.
Right.
So they're sitting there while we're getting the tech stuff ready and setting up the shot, and our 3 actors are joking and being loud and obnoxious and not remotely in character and just being themselves. And my 2 relatives who were there were like, should we say something to them? This is our relative's film. This is important to him, and they're goofing off. somebody should say something. It's going to be heartbreaking. And I'd be like, okay, guys, we ready? And they go into character like that quick. And that same relative came up to me later and was like, you got real actors. And I'm like, yeah, that was kind of, that was sort of the point.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we didn't, like I said, we didn't really have any like major crew issues at all on that. I mean, and it helped that a lot of us had worked together in the past.
Yeah, I was definitely still the most
I
common
drove across the
denominator.
country with Josh. So.
Yeah, you know the leading man better than I do, actually. And but yeah, I was still kind of mostly the common denominator because the people from Delaware didn't even know each other.
Right.
Like they met on that set, and that's how I met Suji from Broken Tile, our leading lady, who's been helping me a lot producing other things. And so I've been partnering with her on quite a bit of stuff in their company, and she's becoming a really good writer and producer too. She's a fantastic actress, but she's really really getting good at those other skills.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. So when does Loose Ends come out? When and where can people see it?
It will be premiering February 23rd at BC Brewery in Hunt Valley, Maryland. And as an added bonus, Dan, your ticket price. Okay, hold on. As an added bonus, Dan, your ticket price includes a 4-pack of Barry's Indulgence Chocolate Cream Pie Stout, which once you see the movie, you'll understand the relevance of why we're having a chocolate cream pie flavored beer to commemorate this particular movie.
So people can buy those tickets online?
They can at bcbrewery.com or bcbrewerymaryland.
md.com or something. I'll put the link in the description down below. So what's next? What can you tell us of what's next?
Well, there's some marketing stuff. I'm going to be making some web spots for somebody. We're just looking for shoot date right now. Scripts are approved. Casting is almost done. Locations are almost locked. So we're kind of looking for shoot days on those. I'd really like to, if an opportunity presents itself, I'd love to do an action sports thing again, like back in the day. I'd love to do more music videos.
Like a skate film or something like that? Or
probably
or BMX, obviously.
Call it what it is, a BMX movie, because
Right.
I don't know what's going on in the other sports. But yeah, I'd love to do a BMX thing. I would love to do some music videos. Story just occurred to me yesterday, and I have to write it down and stick it in a drawer because there's just not time right now to get into it. I also wrote a couple spec scripts. Well, not spec scripts. I also wrote recently a couple of signed scripts. Like I just was hired to be a screenwriter. And one of those I really liked to the point where I'm going to be like, if you're not going to do anything with that, can I like try to produce it? Because it would be fun to get it made. It was my first attempt at sci-fi. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. So we'll see. Other than the 2 experimental things, which we're going to talk about, my producer and I are going to talk about tomorrow, or maybe that film, The Rest of the Money. I don't know. It's whatever Broken Tile's got going, because I'm in on whatever they want to do. I love working with those guys, or whatever I decide to do next.
Right.
So we'll see.
Cool. Well, we could sit here and talk all day. I mean, we've done it before, but I'm not trying to have
What about that time with the tiger in the hotel room, Dan?
We're not supposed to tell anybody about that. Damn, man, now it's out in the world. But yeah, I'm not trying to have, an hour-long podcast here. So again, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for
Let's
having
go
me.
get some food, because I'm hungry.
Yeah, I'm hearing that right now.
So, all right, guys, thanks for watching.